My 16-year-old daughter disappeared in the middle of the night, and by the time I found out where she was, everything I thought I knew about my family was different. My name is Laura. I am 43 years old and I have been married to my husband David for 21 years and we have 2 children, our son Tyler who is 19 and away at college, and our daughter Kendall who is 16 and who has, for her entire life, been the kind of girl that makes people say things like you must be so proud and she's going to do something remarkable. And they were right. She is remarkable. But the night she disappeared taught me something about remarkable girls that I wish someone had told me a long time ago, that the pressure of being remarkable can become its own kind of cage. Let me tell you about our family first, because context matters here. David and I are not bad people. I want to say that clearly because this story is going to make us sound like people who had it coming, and I don't think that's entirely fair, but I also understand why someone might see it that way. We are organized people. Structured people. We go to church on Sundays and we sit in the same pew we have sat in for 15 years and we know everyone there by name and they know us. David is an accountant with his own firm and I manage the office, and we built what we built through discipline and planning and the genuine belief that if you do things the right way, life rewards you for it. That was the world we raised our children in. That was the air in our house. Kendall grew up understanding what was expected. Not because we were cruel about it, we weren't, or at least we didn't mean to be, but because our expectations were so present, so woven into the fabric of daily life, that she absorbed them the way children absorb everything, quietly and completely, before they're old enough to decide for themselves whether they agree. She was a straight-A student. She was in the school orchestra. She volunteered at the library on Saturday mornings and she had a plan, a good plan, a plan that David had helped her build over years, that involved a specific university and a specific career path and a specific version of a future that looked a great deal like ours but shinier. She also had a boyfriend named Jake. We knew about Jake. We had met Jake. He was 17, polite, came from a good family, shook David's hand when he came to the door and said sir and ma'am to us both, and David had approved of him in that particular way David approves of things, with a nod and a brief statement about his potential. I liked Jake too. He seemed to genuinely care about Kendall in the way that teenagers care about each other, which is intensely and imperfectly and with their whole hearts. I remembered what that felt like. I didn't say so out loud because it didn't seem like the kind of thing David would find relevant. The night Kendall disappeared was a Friday in October. She had been at school, then at orchestra practice, then, or so we thought, at a study group at her friend Maya's house. She had texted me at 8:30 to say she was heading home soon and I had texted back okay and told her not to be late because David had an early morning and the house needed to be quiet. She sent back a thumbs up emoji. That was the last message I got from her. By 11 o'clock I noticed her bedroom light was off and assumed she had come in quietly and gone straight to sleep, which she sometimes did when she was tired. I went to bed. David was already asleep. The house was quiet the way we liked it. I woke up at 6:15 the next morning and went to the kitchen to make coffee, and something felt different but I couldn't name it at first. I stood at the counter for a moment and then I walked to Kendall's room and opened the door and her bed was made. Not slept in and made the way it looks when someone hasn't been in it at all. Her school bag was gone. Her phone charger was gone. And on her desk, under her math textbook, there was a folded piece of paper with my name on it in her handwriting. I stood in her doorway holding that piece of paper and I felt the floor tilt. The note said she was safe and she was sorry and she needed a few days and she would explain everything when she could. It said she loved me. It said please don't be angry. And then at the bottom, in smaller writing, almost like she had added it as an afterthought, it said I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you. I wanted to. I just didn't know how. I read it 3 times standing in her doorway. And then I went and woke up David. The next 4 hours were the kind of 4 hours that rearrange something permanent in you. David was on the phone immediately, to Kendall's cell which went straight to voicemail, to Tyler at college who knew nothing, to Maya whose mother answered and said Kendall had never arrived at their house the night before. I sat at the kitchen table with my hands around a cup of coffee that went cold, and I read that note again and again, and I thought about the last few weeks and whether there had been signs I had missed, and the honest answer, the one I didn't want to sit with, was yes. There had been something quieter about her. Something slightly turned inward. I had noticed it and told myself she was tired. It was a busy semester, teenagers go through phases. I had told myself what was easiest to believe. At 10:30 in the morning my phone rang. It was Amanda. Amanda is my oldest friend and Kendall's godmother, and she's everything David and I are not: loose and warm and funny, and the kind of person who keeps her front door unlocked because she thinks locks are unfriendly. She and I have been close since college, but she and David have always had a careful relationship, the way people have careful relationships when they fundamentally see the world differently but love the same person. Kendall adored her. Had always adored her in that particular way teenagers adore the adult in their life who doesn't seem to have any rules. Amanda's voice when I picked up was calm but careful in a way that told me she had been preparing what she was going to say. "Laura," she said. "Kendall is here. She's safe. I need you to listen to me before you say anything." I gripped the phone. "Okay," I said. "She came to me last night because she didn't know where else to go," Amanda said. "And she asked me not to call you until this morning because she needed to sleep and she needed to think. I honored that because she needed someone to honor something for her." A pause. "Laura, I'm going to tell you what's going on, and I need you to hear it with your whole heart and not just the part of you that's frightened, okay?" "Amanda." My voice came out very small. "Just tell me." And she did. Kendall was pregnant. I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, and Amanda said the words and I heard them and my brain processed them, and then everything went very quiet for a moment, the way everything goes quiet when something too large arrives all at once. "How far along?" I asked. My voice sounded like someone else's. "About 8 weeks, Amanda said. She found out 3 weeks ago. She's been carrying this alone since then, Laura." 3 weeks. She went to a clinic by herself on a Tuesday afternoon and took the test and got the result and came home and sat at your dinner table and nobody knew. I thought about 3 weeks ago. I thought about the Tuesday dinners we had eaten together. I thought about Kendall passing the salad and answering David's questions about her grades and laughing at something Tyler said on the group chat, and all of it, every ordinary moment of it, happening while she was carrying something that must have felt like the weight of the entire world. "She wanted to tell you," Amanda said. "I want you to know that. She wanted to so many times. But she was terrified, Laura. Not of you, she was terrified of disappointing you. Of what David would say. Of what it would mean for everything she had been working toward." I didn't say anything. "She loves you so much," Amanda said. "That's why she couldn't tell you." Does that make sense? It did. It made a terrible, heartbreaking kind of sense. I told Amanda I was coming. Amanda said to give her an hour, that Kendall needed to know I was coming before I arrived, that she needed to not be ambushed. I said okay. I hung up and I sat down at the kitchen table and I put my face in my hands and I stayed like that for a long time. Then I heard David come into the kitchen. I had to tell him. There was no version of this where I didn't tell him, and I had approximately 30 seconds to decide how to do it before he saw my face and started asking questions. I looked up at him and I said, "Amanda called. Kendall is with her. She's safe." And I watched the relief move across his face, and then I said, "David, sit down. There's something else." I told him. I said it plainly and without softening it because I have been married to this man for 21 years and I know that he does not respond well to things being softened. I watched his face go through the relief and then the confusion and then something that I can only describe as a closing, like shutters coming down over a window. "She's pregnant," he repeated. "Yes." He was quiet for a long moment. And then he said, very controlled, very measured, "Jake." "I assume so. I don't know yet." "She's 16 years old," he said. "She has a plan. She has a future. He stood up from the table and walked to the window and stood there with his back to me. What are people going to say, Laura? Our friends. The people at church. After everything he stopped. Started again. I had plans for her. Something moved in me when he said that. Not anger exactly. Something quieter and more certain than anger. David, I said. Your daughter is 16 years old and she is sitting in Amanda's house right now because she was so afraid of this exact conversation that she ran away rather than have it. That is what's happening. That is what matters right now. He turned around. His jaw was tight. I know that, he said. I need you to know it in your whole body, I said. Not just your head. We drove to Amanda's in separate cars because I needed to not be in a small space with David's silence for 30 minutes. I called Kendall from the car and she answered on the second ring, and when she heard my voice she started crying immediately, that particular crying that sounds like relief and shame and exhaustion all at once, and I said, "Baby, I'm coming. I'm almost there. You don't have to explain anything yet." And she said, "Mom, I'm so sorry," and I said, "I know. We're going to be okay. Just stay there." Amanda met me at the door. She squeezed my arm and she said, "She's in the living room," and she said it in a tone that told me she was going to give us space, which is one of the things I love most about Amanda. She always knows exactly when to step back. Kendall was sitting on Amanda's couch with her knees pulled up and her arms wrapped around them, making herself as small as she could, and when I walked in she looked at me with those eyes, her eyes, the ones she has had since she was born, that see everything, and I crossed the room and I sat next to her and I put my arms around her and she collapsed into me the way she used to when she was 4 years old and had a bad dream, completely and without reservation, and we stayed like that for a long time without saying anything at all. Eventually I pulled back and looked at her face. She had been crying for a long time before I arrived and she looked exhausted and young and frightened and so completely my daughter that it hurt somewhere specific and deep. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. Not with accusation, genuinely, with the particular sadness of a mother who needed to understand. She looked at me for a moment. "Because I knew what you would feel," she said quietly. "And I couldn't stand causing that. I thought if I just figured it out myself, you wouldn't have to feel it." I held her face in my hands. "Kendall. That is my job. Feeling things about your life is my job. You don't protect me from that." She started crying again. I held her again. David arrived 20 minutes after me. I heard his car in the driveway and I felt Kendall go slightly rigid next to me and I took her hand and held it and said, "It's okay." She didn't look like she believed me. He came in and he stood in the doorway of Amanda's living room and he looked at his daughter on the couch and something happened in his face that I hadn't been sure I was going to see. The shutters came back up. Not the closed ones, the open ones. He crossed the room and he sat on the other side of Kendall and he didn't say anything for a moment and then he said, very quietly, "I owe you an apology." Kendall looked at him. "My first thought was about what people would say," he said. "And that was wrong. My first thought should have been about you." He stopped. His voice was thicker than usual. "I have put things on you, expectations, plans, pressure, and I told myself it was for your benefit and maybe some of it was but some of it was also for mine and I am sorry for that." He looked at her directly. "You are my daughter. Whatever comes next, we figure it out together. All three of us. Okay?" Kendall looked at him for a long moment. And then she leaned her head against his shoulder the way she used to when she was small, and he put his arm around her, and I sat on the other side and held her hand, and the three of us stayed like that in Amanda's living room while the afternoon light moved slowly across the floor. On the way home, Kendall rode with me. We drove mostly in silence but somewhere on the highway she said, "Mom, are you disappointed in me?" I kept my eyes on the road. "I'm sad that you were alone with this for 3 weeks," I said. "I'm sad that we made you feel like you couldn't come to us. That's what I feel." I glanced at her. "But disappointed?" "No. Not even a little." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, baby," I said. "Always. No matter what. Always." And we drove the rest of the way home together,